After a series of disastrous interviews, my good friend Gretchen decided to come work for me at my philosophy counseling company for a couple of months. She was overqualified for the job. I was just going to have her, checking my phones and managing some spreadsheets. But she really just was looking for a place to kind of lay low for a while and be anonymous while she waited for a PR nightmare to blow over. So on Monday, Gretchen showed up late for work because she was distracted practicing the piano. My clients were depending on somebody to be answering the phone, so I told her, I said, look, I love that you're practicing the piano. Like you're a good pianist. I like listening to you, and I love that, you're improving yourself. But I really need you to keep your word when you say you'll show up at 8 a.m. So she said, okay, in the future I'll keep my word. The next day, I arrived at work, and Gretchen was there even before me. But she had a smirk on her face that made me a little bit uneasy. So I said, Gretchen, did anything interesting happen today? And she looked at me and she said, yeah, actually something did. She said, you know that rival counseling company down the street, the rival philosophy counseling company? And I said, yeah. And she looked at me with a wink and she said, pretty soon they won't be a problem anymore. So that made me even more nervous. So I feared the worst. So I ran out of my building. I ran down the street. I ran over to them, and I found that everybody over there was just in a state of panic and disarray. And I said, what's going on? And they told me, our computers have been infected with a virus, and all of our files are being deleted one by one. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's Gretchen. She would definitely have them delete the files one by one just to kind of torture them a little bit. But I also knew Gretchen. I knew her well enough that she wasn't going to delete them. She would just hide the files. So I said, look, I know what's going on. I know we're competitors, but we've been friends for a while, and we have a fairly good relationship. I'll make you a deal. I can fix your computers. But I need you to promise that you're not going to involve the police and nothing bad's going to happen to Gretchen. So they said, sure, okay. I fixed them, and I went back, and I said, Gretchen, I think it's great that you were showing gratitude to me because I was kind of your benefactor in this context, but please don't harm innocent people. They don't deserve that. Please don't do that in the future. And she said, okay. So that was Tuesday. Next morning, Wednesday morning, Gretchen's there on time. Everything is going along as usual. Nothing weird happens. But then at lunchtime, the police show up. And they say, sorry to bother you. Did anybody see anything weird happen this morning? Anything suspicious? And Gretchen said, yes, as a matter of fact, I did. When I was walking to work today, I saw a man get thrown out of a moving vehicle. And he was all tied up, and he seemed kind of injured. And the police were like, what did you do? She was like, well, I gave Aaron my word that I would make it to work on time, so I didn't want to mess that up. So I just kind of stepped over him and kept going. I was horrified when I heard Gretchen telling the police this. And then they responded by saying, I wish you had done something, because he later succumbed to his injuries and now he's in the morgue. So they left, and I said, Gretchen, again, I'm really grateful that you kept your word by showing up to work on time, but please, if there's somebody who really needs your help and is dying, please do something. That's a lot more important than, making it into work on time. So the story I just told contains a couple of moral principles. Keep your word. Improve your skills. Don't harm innocent others. Show gratitude towards your benefactors. And benefit those who really need your help. And one approach to trying to make sense of all these different moral principles is to try to look for one fundamental principle from which you could derive all of them. Something like Carson's golden rule or the Kantian categorical imperative. But I'm going to be discussing an alternative approach, the approach of Sir William David Ross. Now, according to Ross, instead of there existing one basic moral principle, there is a plurality of moral principles, of basic moral principles. These are prima facie duties. Now, what is a prima facie duty? Well, a prima facie duty, unlike the absolute duties that Kant talked about, like the categorical imperative, never use somebody merely as a means, but always at the same time as an end in themselves. A prima facie duty is as follows. If you have a prima facie duty to perform some action, you have a moral reason to perform that action. But there could be another moral reason that outweighs the first moral reason. And according to Ross, there were 7 different prima facie duties, and I'm going to read them now. Justice, beneficence, self-improvement, non-maleficence, fidelity, reparation, and gratitude. So instead of working through all of these one by one, I'm going to put a description of each one of them on the screen. You can pause this video and read through them at your leisure. Now, one thing you might be wondering is, how do I sort through these different duties when they conflict? How do I figure out what to do? Is it the case that non-maleficence always outweighs beneficence? Is it the case that justice always outweighs duties of gratitude? The answer is no. According to Ross, there is no meta principle that tells us always favor this duty over this other duty. Instead, what you have to do is you have to look at the case, look at all the details of the case that you find yourself in, and use your judgment to figure out which duty is the most stringent in the circumstances at hand. Now, you might find that dissatisfying because you might be thinking like, come on, I want like something more than that. I want like a principle that tells me what to do. But when we think about actual cases, this is often not a problem. So let's go back through the Gretchen case. On Monday, she was choosing between her prima facie duty of self-improvement and her prima facie duty of fidelity, keeping her word. And it really seemed like in that case, unless she had some really pressing piano recital that she had to do and a whole lot was hanging on it, it really seems like keeping her word, fidelity, was the more important duty. On Tuesday, she was deciding between the duties of non-maleficence and gratitude. And it really seemed in that case it seems obvious that in that case, non-maleficence outweighed gratitude. It was more important that she not harm these innocent competitors than that she repay her debt of gratitude to me, act on this duty of gratitude in the way that she did. On Wednesday, there was a conflict between the duty of fidelity and the duty of beneficence. There was this man who was really suffering, dying out in the street, and she could have benefited him by at least calling an ambulance. But instead, she chose to act on the duty of fidelity and stay true to her word. Seems like in that context, the more stringent duty clearly was beneficence. So, in a lot of real-life cases, it's just obvious which one is more stringent. So it's actually less of a problem than you might think, that there isn't some meta principle that tells us always have this duty over this other one, right? But you might find yourself in cases where it's genuinely difficult to figure out what the right thing to do is. And the best thing I can offer you is that you should just practice. Subject these ideas to scrutiny. Think really carefully. And talk to other people about it. And as you keep doing it, you'll be able to practice and you'll be able to get better, and you'll find ways of making decisions, even in these really difficult cases where at first it doesn't seem clear which duty is the most stringent.